So it seems as if only Evans is the one person there, and he is getting a kind of individual tuition for it. Now comes the day of the exam. All the arrangements have to be made. The authorities are worried because an outsider is going to come inside the jail premises. They don't know, what could happen. So to make all the safety arrangements to prevent any kind of mishappening to occur, they are very, very alert, and they're going to make all the security arrangements. We have started with the beginning of the chapter, and the beginning, it was the discussion between the secretary of the examination board and the governor. Okay, right? And yes, so they are discussing about that, how there's only one person and who is going to be the invigilator, how the exam is going to be conducted. So the secretary of the examination, he has his concern that Evans should be the only one there in the room, because he's a single student who is appearing. So what should be there, like nobody else should be there with him for safety reasons. But yeah, so, and the governor says, as it is, he's the only student and he is alone in his cell, right? So that would not be an issue. And yes, so they're wondering who's going to be the invigilator, who will they send to the prison, because otherwise people are not ready to go over there, be there with the criminals, because this is what our attitude is, and this is what the society thinks. That yes, because they are dangerous, they might hurt, they might create problems. Okay, right? So we'll continue with the chapter. So please open your books, all of you. I'll just share the screen in a moment. Just a minute. Right. So if you look at the screen, please. And yes, Evans had the problem that he was a kleptomaniac. That was, he could not control himself, and he has been in prison for this problem of his. He could not control himself from stealing. So it was a kind of a disorder that he had. It was a problem, a congenital disorder that he had, right? And he was quite a lively person, and at the at the concerts or the things that were arranged in the prison, so he was quite lively, and he would sing songs, and so he was quite known, obviously, for what notorious reasons also. That was that he has attempted to escape before. So this is not the first time that he might attempt it. So there are chances he might attempt it again. So the authorities are very, they have to be very alert. They have to be very careful that such a thing should not happen. Besides, an outsider is coming, and they are responsible for the safety of that person also. Okay. Right. Now, yes, we'll just here we had read about the conversation between Evans and his German teacher. His German teacher wishes him best of luck, and Evans is unable to understand that. So we can well imagine how much he has learned and what he has done. Okay, right? But still he says that his teacher is saying, yeah, all the best, right? I'm very surprised what you're going to do. But he says that I might surprise you with my performance, with my research. At 8:30 a.m. the following morning, Evans had a visitor. Two visitors, in fact. He tucked his grubby string vest into his equally grubby trousers and stood up from his bunk, smiling cheerfully. Morning, Mr. Jackson. This is indeed an honor. Grubby string vest. Grubby, not clean, right? And so he was not looking a very neat and clean person. And who was there? Who came to his cell? Two people. That is Mr. Jackson and yes, Officer Stevens. So they are the prison officers, right? So both of them come to make the security arrangements, to make sure that everything is all right for the exam the following day. Jackson was a senior prison officer on D Wing, and he and Evans had already become warm enemies. At Jackson's side stood Officer Stephens, a burly, surly-looking man, only recently recruited to the profession. So there are two people here. One is Jackson, the other is Stephens. Now, this is very important information, which is going to be there in the story as we read later on, okay? Officer Stevens is a new recruit. He's a new person who's just joined the profession, right? Jackson is an old, experienced person. He's been there working for a long time. And yes, he's quite familiar with Evans. And it seems that both of them are enemies also, right? Not real enemies, but yes, so because he's in the jail and the officer knows how to handle him and how to deal with him. Jackson nodded curtly. And how's a little Einstein this morning then? Sarcasm, right? You're studying, you have an exam. Wasn't he a mathematician, Mr. Jackson? I think he was a Jew, Mr. Jackson. Right? So he's both of them, yeah. So he's saying it wasn't he a mathematician, but he was saying that he was a Jew. Evans' face was unshaven and he wore a filthy looking red and white bobble hat upon his head. So he's looking very untidy. His vest was not clean, his trousers, he had not shaved, and on his head he wore a red and white cap, Give me a chance, Mr. Jackson. I was just going to shave when you bust in. Bust in when you entered. Which reminds me, Jackson turned his eyes on Stephens. Make sure you take his razor out of the cell when he's finished scraping that ugly mug off his face. Clear? One of these days, he'll do us all a favor and cut his bloody throat. So, right. So Jackson is not at all on friendly terms with Evans. And he says that after he's shaved, make sure that he has taken the razor out. Like you take it out, it is not with him. One day he might cut his, neck by mistake. And they don't want to leave any kind of a sharp object because it would be a danger for the person coming to conduct the exam. For a few seconds, Evans looked thoughtfully at the man standing right ramrod straight in front of him. A Second World War medals proudly paraded over his left breast pocket. Mr. Jackson, was it you who took my nail scissors away? Evans had always worried about his hands and your nail file too. See, even though Evans was quite an untidy person, he did not bother about shaving, right, and his appearance also. But one thing that he was very particular about, that was his hands. His hands were very neat. He would make sure that his nails were trimmed and filed and shaped properly, okay? Right, so a very, one special point about him was that he is very particular about his hands. Look. For a moment, Evans' eyes smoldered dangerously, but Jackson was ready for him. Orders of the Governor Evans. He leaned forward and leered, his voice dropping to a harsh, contemptuous whisper. You want to complain? So yeah, so it is there, the kind of relation between the prisoner and the jailer. So he's there, he's taunting him. Are you going to complain? So when you're not supposed to keep any sharp object in your cell. Evans shrugged his shoulders lightly. The crisis was over. Moment is over. Nothing bad happened. You've got half an hour to smarten yourself up, Evans, and take that bloody hat off. So he does not like the hat, right? It's looking very untidy on him. Me at? Evans put his right hand lovingly on the top of the filthy woolen and smiled at. Do you know, Mr. Jackson, it's the only thing that's ever brought me any sort of luck in life. Kind of lucky charm, if you know what I mean. And today I thought, well, with me, exam and all that. So he's saying that, yes, so he's having his exam and he thought he could wear his lucky hat. Okay. And yes, the officer wants him to take it off, but he's saying, let me wear it. And, maybe you people also might doing it that, okay, if I write with this pen, my exam will go well, or I should wear this shirt, right? Or the same shirt for the exams. Some people do that also. that it will bring them good luck. So all these are there, yes, so things that we are, like practicing. So even Evans, although right, it seems we don't know what he's going to write for the exam because he does not even know the basics of German, but he is there, like, let me wear this hat of mine. It is my lucky charm. Okay. Buried somewhere in Jackson was a tiny core of compassion, and Evans knew it. After all, he was a human being. He might appear to be very strict and very tough, but inside he did have some kind of kindness, and Evans was quick to exploit it. Just this one, then Shirley Temple. If there was one thing that Jackson genuinely loathed about Evans, it was his long wavy hair and get shaving. So maybe call him after rock star or something, right? Then shave your face. At 8:45, the same morning, the Reverend Stuart McCleary left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and stepped out briskly towards Carfax. Now, before that, the examination board and the governor, they were discussing about the invigilator, and they had thought that if a priest came from one of the, like churches over there, the parish, he would be the best person because they will not talk much and they will not interact, and they will just do their duty quietly. So any other person might be a little talkative. Now here, who is going to come for the exam? Who is invigilator? Stuart McCleary. So please remember these things. Who is Evans? Yes, who is Evans? Evans is the convict. And what is he going to do? He's going to give his German exam, right? Now, the governor, yes, he's the head of the prison and he is responsible for all the security. Then we have two officers, Jackson and Stephens. Jackson is the old, experienced one and Stephen is new, right? And then we have the invigilator, that is the Reverend Stuart McCleary. So please remember these characters, and these are the main characters, yes, in this story. The weatherman reported temperatures considerably below the normal for early June, and a long black overcoat and shallow-crowned clerical hat provided welcome protection from the steady drizzle which had set in half an hour earlier and which now spattered the thick lenses of his spectacles. In his right hand, he was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties, including a sealed question paper envelope, a yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examination board, a paper knife, a Bible. He was to speak to the Women's Guild that afternoon on the Book of Ruth, and a current copy of the Church Times. Now, please, all these details are very, very important. Now, just imagine that you are going to investigate a crime scene. And for the crime scene, any kind of evidence, anything, it is not to be taken lightly, okay? So these are the contents of McCleary's suitcase. They have been described so perfectly. He has a paper knife, he has the Bible, he has the water, the Church Times, right? A paper he has the question papers which he's going to take, right? And for the invigilation purposes, okay? So, and how was he dressed? He was wearing that long black overcoat, okay? And because what had been forecast that the temperature for today might be lower than normal and there was a slight rain. So he is dressed because it is cold weather. So he's wearing this black long overcoat, okay? And generally, yes, when you see the priests and all, so they wear this habit, black habit. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. Evans was lathering his face vigorously when Stephens brought in 2 small square tables and set them opposite each other in the narrow space between the bunk on the one side and on the other a distempered stone wall. Next, Stephens brought in 2 hard chairs, the slightly less battered of which he placed in front of the table which stood nearer the cell door. Now, what does Stephen come? He's brought 2 tables and he's brought 2 chairs, one for the invigilator, one for the candidate, right? So one for McCleary and one for Evans, okay? Jackson put in a brief final appearance. Behave yourself, laddie. Laddie is, yeah, a slang for lad, young boy, young man. So behave yourself. Evans turned and nodded. And these, Jackson pointed to the pin-ups off. So he's put some posters on the walls of his cell. He said, take them down. Evans turned and nodded again. I was going to take him down. Anyway, a minister, isn't he? The chap coming to sit in, I mean. Now, Evans, yes, so he's saying like, oh, I was going to, there's a minister coming, minister as in a priest, right, from the church, he's coming. I was going to take him down. And how did you know that? Asked Jackson quietly. Well, I had to sign some forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help. So when I was signing the forms, right, for my examination, I couldn't help notice the name of the invigilator. Evans drew the razor carefully down his left cheek, left a neat swath in the white lather. Can I ask you something, Mr. Jackson? Why did they have to bug me in this cell? He nodded his head vaguely to a point above the door. Now, Evans is very smart. He's noticed everything. He said, why have they bugged my cell? What are bugs? Yes? What are bugs? What are they? Anyone? So these bugs are these devices so that they can hear, like microphones, you know, like so they can hear the conversation that is going on, and it would be attached maybe with the governor's office, so he could hear the conversation. Because yes, it is a very high security task. It is something which they have to, you know, do with utmost security, and so they did not want to take any risk. Okay, so that is why his cell has been bugged, and Evans has noticed it. So he's quite smart. Not a very neat job, conceded Jackson. So they were not hidden properly. They're not concealed, or like Evans could find them. He could notice them that, okay, they are there. They're not. They don't honestly think I'm going to try to. They're taking no chances, Evans. Nobody in his senses would take any chance with you. Who's going to listen in? I'll tell you who's going to listen in, laddie. It's the governor himself. See, he don't trust you a bloody inch, and nor do I. I'll be watching you like a hawk. Evans, so keep your nose clear. He walked towards the door. That means don't try to do anything funny, okay? So just to be a little sensible, be a little responsible. Evans nodded. He'd already thought of that. And number 2 handkerchief was lying ready on the bunk. A neatly folded square of off-white linen. So he's already kept a handkerchief ready, right? For being literally neat and clean. Just one more thing, Einstein. Yeah, what's that? Good luck, old son. In the little lodge just inside the prison's main gates, the Reverend S. McCleary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book and then walked side by side with a silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D wing, where he was greeted by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind him, the heavy inner door the same, and McCleary was handed into Stephen's keeping. Get the razor, murmured Jackson. Stephens nodded. Well, keep your eyes skinned clear. Now, what has happened on one side, Evans is getting ready for his exam. He's shaving. He's taken down the posters from the walls, right? And yes, what else has he done? Yes, so he's noticed that his cell has been bugged, and he's asked to be very alert and, you know, like behave properly. On the other side, who is entering? McCleary. Who is McCleary? He is the invigilator. And it has been described what he was wearing, a black overcoat, and he wore a hat, and it was drizzling. He was carrying a suitcase in one hand, and the contents of the suitcase have also been described. Now, yes, the invigilator has come. What should happen next? The exam should begin. 9:15, the exam was supposed to start. It was a 2-hour exam. And in these 2 hours, they are going to be the examination for the prison authorities also. They have to make sure everything goes smoothly and Evans does not try to do anything, you know what, funny, does not try to escape. Okay. And yes, who is Stephen? Who is Stephen? Stephen is the young detective, the new one, and Jackson is the older, experienced one. Why is it important that they take the razor away from him? Because they should not have any sharp object, right, with which he can try to threaten someone or hurt someone. Okay. Well, keep your eyes skinned clear. Stephens nodded again, and McCleary, his feet clanging up the iron stairs, followed his new guide and finally stood before a cell door where Stephens opened the peephole and looked through. That's him, sir. Evans, facing the door, sat quietly at the further of the two tables. Now, who is facing the door? Evans is facing the door, right? He's looking towards that side. And who is facing the wall? The invigilator. His whole attention riveted to a textbook of elementary German grammar, last minute preparations, okay? Evans is going through his grammar book. Stephens took the key from its ring and the cell lock sprang back like with a thudded metallic twang sound, right? So Evans was there in his room, in his cell, sorry, and he's reading his German grammar. And who has entered? Yes, so it is Stephens, and he's opened the door and he has allowed McCleary to enter. It was 9:10 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. So who is going to listen to the bugs? Who is going to listen to the mics which are there in the cell? The governor. He had instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution. That was only fair, as if Evans wouldn't spot it. But wasn't it all a bit theatrical? So they're thinking, aren't we just overreacting? Is it required? Schoolboyish almost. How on earth was Evans going to try on anything on today? If he was so anxious to make another break, why in heaven's name hadn't he tried it from the recreational block? Much easier, but he hadn't. And there he was now, sitting in a locked cell, all the prison officers on the alert, two more locked doors between his cell and the yard, and a yard with a wall as high as a haystack. Yes, Evans was safe as safe as houses. So now, yeah, the governor is saying maybe we're just overreacting. Why we, so worried? And there is so much of security. All the officers on alert. Nothing has happened, and right, and nothing will happen. So we're just overthinking too much that Evans will try to escape, right? And he could have tried from the recreational, block, which is maybe near the wall, quite near to it. It's easy for him to escape. But yahan pe he'll come out of his cell. There are two gates over there, and then he will reach the yard, and around the yard, what the outer, the periphery. It has such a high wall, it's so difficult to climb. How is he going to escape? Anyway, it won't be any trouble at all to have the receiver turned on for the next couple hours or so. He says, koi baat nahi, it's just for 2 hours. It wasn't as if there was going to be anything to listen to, was it? Among other things, an invigilator's duty was to ensure that the strictest silence was observed. So you know that you have a lot of experience of giving exams. An invigilator is not going to talk with the candidate, but he is going to make sure that he sits quiet and does the exam on time, right? But still that little nagging doubt, might Evans try to take advantage of McCleary, get him to smuggle in a chisel or two or rope ladder, right? So maybe he might, take advantage of this man and might ask him to help him in escaping. Could have asked him to bring a rope or something like that. Anything could happen. So like the prison authorities, they are at a very high alert, and they want everything to go smoothly so that, yes, there should be no danger at all. There should be no problem, and even should not try to hurt the invigilator. Okay. And it's just a precaution that they are taking, although they know that there is so much of security. How is Evans going to escape? Right now, that is the big question. Will Evans try to escape? Right? So we'll continue with it on